Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me here today. My name is Fabiana Bacchini. I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation. And every Monday and Fridays, we are doing Facebook Lives, bringing experts and ICU parents from all over Canada to really answer your questions and address your concerns during this very difficult time you are living in right now. And every Wednesday, we have a real-time peer support group with Kate Robson, who is a psychotherapist and also a mom of 2 premature girls, hosting these groups. And for you to access the link, you can join the Canadian Premier Parent Network, which is our private parent group here on Facebook. And today we're going to talk about human milk and breastfeeding during this pandemic. And I have here with me Dr. Merilee Brockway. She's a registered nurse and an international board certified lactation consultant. She completed her PhD in nursing at the University of Calgary, and she's currently a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Manitoba, exploring clinical applications of donor human milk. Merilee, thank you for joining us and welcome here today.
Thank you, Fabiana, for having me.
So in the beginning of the pandemic, the World Health Organization kept the recommendations of parents, moms who are actually COVID positive or under investigation to keep breastfeeding. This is still the recommendation today, a few months later? And if yes, is it safe?
Yes, absolutely. So pretty much now all health regions throughout the world are on board with keeping or recommending that women who are COVID positive or under the investigation for COVID, that they do keep breastfeeding or providing breast milk if possible. The Canadian Pediatric Society just updated their guidelines to make sure that we are also not recommending that moms and babies get separated. This is, of course, for full-term infants. For preterm infants, we still recommend that the breast milk is provided. But again, you have to go according to your NICU guidelines. If mom, of course, is COVID positive, then there will be guidelines about being with the baby.
So mom can still continue to pump, because obviously if the baby goes to the ICU, mom is positive on the investigation, mommy won't be able to go. And regardless of that, we still need to pump when the baby is in the NICU. So is it safe to continue pumping? And is there a specific recommendation on how to cleaning the kids to avoid transmission?
Right. So you would want to use your regular pump cleaning strategies that you're given by your NICU. Absolutely keep pumping. Now, that being said, every NICU might have individual recommendations about bringing milk that from a COVID positive mom onto the unit. They may have different guidelines as far as sterilizing the bottles and what have you. Journal of Human Lactation has released some recommendations about sterilizing bottles for moms that are COVID positive. So some places have taken up those recommendations and others have not. But absolutely to keep pumping, and you can put that breast milk in your freezer and use it later if the NICU won't take your milk at that time.
So if they cannot take the milk, is that an option? What is the alternative for that? Donor milk bank or?
Yeah, so most NICUs in Canada will offer donor milk if mom's milk is not available. There's several milk banks across Canada. And if your baby, or if you can't provide your baby with your own breast milk, and that option hasn't been offered to you of donor human milk, definitely ask your care providers because some hospitals have a milk bank attached to them, but other hospitals use the community milk banks. The one that we have in Calgary donates milk across Canada.
Okay, and you're going to talk about that milk bank a little bit later as well. But I want to talk about an article that you just recently wrote about breastfeeding. Why you still recommend that the support system around breastfeeding has changed. So how is that changed and how is that impacting the parents?
Well, typically when women first or when mothers first deliver, they do get support in the hospital to start breastfeeding. In the context of premature birth, the baby is admitted to the NICU and mom is often supported to start pumping even when she's on the postpartum unit. Now, in the case of COVID, women tend to be discharged very quickly. So with a normal full-term uncomplicated delivery here in Calgary, for example, women are getting discharged after 6 hours. So there isn't that time for to see a breastfeed or to give that additional support around pumping in the hospital. So a lot of the supports have transitioned to the community But of course, when you get into the community, the face-to-face interactions are limited. So to go see a lactation consultant in person and have a breastfeeding, an actual breastfeeding event observed isn't necessarily an option. So we've moved a lot of our supports online via Zoom, like we're doing now, or virtually over the telephone or other video options. So those are options that are available now.
So is it hard for moms? Because I read on your article that 89% of babies start breastfeeding in hospital. And of course, I remember my first son, who was a third baby, and I really struggled. So I spent 2 days in the hospital, the lactation consultant, and then I have the cushion and how to position the baby better. Came home and I still struggle. I still have to go back to a breastfeeding clinic. So now it is online option. It's still efficient for moms, and mom can still benefit from those sessions. And I know it's tough, there is no other option right now, but how do you feel moms are feeling with those online consultations?
I think it's definitely a loss of support. So typically in the hospital, we don't like to release moms and babies until we see a good feed. And now that's not happening. So that is a lost opportunity in the hospital. But I think that, it's not the ideal situation where we don't have that in-person face-to-face interaction in the hospital or in the community setting. But I think it also is presenting some opportunities for us to be a bit more innovative with the way that we provide breastfeeding support, because our supports are generally only available to women who can access them. And so now our supports are going to be available to people who maybe don't live in the city or can easily access lactation consultants. So there are some opportunities through this disruptive innovation that's happening to expand support. But again, the support is going to be different. And that tangible, hands-on visualizing a good latch may not be as effective.
Right. Let's just hope everything can go back to certain normal, or the new normal, whatever that will be, so moms can really feel that support. But I've been talking to a lot of different clinicians, and how much is being online live is pretty great. I think for families who live remote and maybe wouldn't have access to come back to the hospital, to have that opportunity to have an expert even online to support them at that time.
Absolutely.
So my question is, for the preterm moms who are actually in the hospital, the support is still there, because it's the hospitals, I guess, they still have their lactation consultants and their nurses to support them with pumping or the early days of breastfeeding.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's still happening.
Yeah, as long as mom isn't COVID positive or under investigation for a potential COVID and can physically be on the unit, the supports haven't really changed that much.
So you also talk about the support of La Leche League. Are they offering anything online? We are going to make all the links available for if you're interested. It's going to be on our feed below the screen today. So are they offering anything online for parents?
La Leche League has always offered telephone support. I do believe that they've kind of ramped up that support because there is a little bit more demand on that. So La Leche League does have a phone number anyone can call who's breastfeeding and talk to a leader that can walk them through or talk them through any sort of challenges that they're experiencing. Like I said, that support's always been there, and it's definitely a very useful tool to use right now.
Absolutely. It's available for anyone in Canada. And I think the website is LLC.ca, which is, I think there's a lot there for new parents. So let's talk a little bit about research, because I know this is something you're very passionate about. And I know there is a lot of research happening around the world on breastfeeding and COVID-19, and you've been involved in some of it. So tell us about it.
There is a lot of research happening. So when COVID-19 did come about, a big consortium of breastfeeding researchers from around the world have gathered together on a virtual platform and are really working hard to bring about scientific methods that are really well validated so that we can accurately measure if the virus is present in breast milk, and maybe more importantly or more excitingly, if antibodies from the virus are present in breast milk. So if mom has been exposed at some point, does her breast milk actually have some protective properties against COVID-19 or the SARS-CoV-2 virus.
So there's evidence already out there.
There is some evidence. So unfortunately, it's really hard. So in traditional research, it takes a while to get things published, which is how we look at good evidence because it's peer reviewed. So the research is starting to come out in publications, and what we're seeing right now is there's no evidence that's published that the virus is present in breast milk. There is one researcher, Rebecca Powell, out of New York City, who's doing some work and has discovered that about 80% of moms who have had COVID have antibodies in their breast milk. Again, her research isn't published yet, so I can't say that it's been peer reviewed as well, but they're showing some promise.
That is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And now I want to talk a little bit about your research on your PhD you examined maternal breastfeeding self-efficacy and infant outcomes in Alberta. I know you research a lot of late preterms and moderate preterms. So what were your findings there?
So we did in Alberta here. So our health region is, we have one health region for the entire province pretty much. And we did a randomized control trial where we did family integrated care in our intervention sites and then just standard care in our other sites. And family integrated care very quickly is where we bring parents into the hospital and they participate in a lot of the care of their preterm infant. And this was in level 2 NICUs. So generally with moderate and late preterm infants, so infants born after 32 weeks. And I looked at breastfeeding self-efficacy and essentially what breastfeeding self-efficacy is maternal confidence around breastfeeding. So being able to push through any sort of barriers or perceptions that you can do it despite barriers that you have. And what we found, what the previous research said is that a longer NICU stay or longer NICU stay reduces a mom's confidence in breastfeeding. And we found that with FICare, or bringing the families in to work with their infants throughout the hospital stay, those moms actually had increases in their breastfeeding self-efficacy. So what that meant is by being maybe involved with their infant throughout the hospital stay a little bit more and having more confidence around working with their infant, they were more confident in feeding their infant as well.
So this improved the breastfeeding rates going home?
We're still looking at that. We found that it was more effective in mothers of late preterm infants rather than moderate preterm infants. And that's likely because with a moderate preterm infant, there's a lot more complex issues happening. So they're worried a little bit more about how their baby's doing. Whereas a late preterm infant, there is a lot of emphasis in the hospital around feeding. So they get to focus their energies around that. What we did find, the biggest factor for breastfeeding success was that mom was able to directly breastfeed her baby before leaving, rather than leaving with a pump. So that was one point of emphasis that we found was really important, is making sure or supporting moms to do that direct breastfeeding and latching at the breast, rather than sending them home with the pump, because when they get home with the pump, they have the baby to care for, and then they maybe have to triple feed, so pump, bottle feed, and then clean the pump and try and latch the baby as well. So that's a lot of load for mom to deal with.
Absolutely. And you still have a very good follow-up in Alberta, because I think it's very different from the rest of Canada. We have that continuum of service that we don't see in many other provinces here.
Yeah, we're very lucky that way. And the study in particular with FICare is going to be looking at all the outcomes until 18 months of age. So we'll be following up breastfeeding outcomes as well. But yeah, we're very unique in Alberta, where we have that unified health board throughout.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
So now I met you just a couple of months ago when the world was very different, and you were presenting your latest research, and I was fascinated about it. You were talking about donor milk, and I want you to explain what is your plan, what is your research, because I think it is such a great research to do and to explore.
Thank you, Fabi. I'm excited about it too. So I kind of switched gears a little bit with my post-doctoral fellowship. I'm with Dr. Meghan Azad at the University of Manitoba, but physically still located in Calgary. And what we're looking at is donor human milk, and if we can match donor human milk, kind of like we match blood products to people, based on a maternal genetic marker. So some moms have a marker, we call them secretors, and some moms are not secretors, and it's about 80% of moms are and 20% of moms are not. And why that's important is because moms who are secretors make different kinds of sugars in their breast milk than moms who are not secretors. And these sugars that we're interested in are actually not sugars to feed the baby. They're sugars that feed bacteria. They're called human milk oligosaccharides, and they are the third most common solid component or component of breast milk outside of water. So it's water is like 80 to 90% of breast milk. And then we have carbohydrates, lipids, human milk oligosaccharides, and then proteins. And those babies cannot digest these human milk oligosaccharides. But like I said, they're meant for bacteria. And the human milk oligosaccharides that moms who are secretors make feed different kinds of bacteria than the human milk oligosaccharides that moms who are non-secretors make. And they're completely different in certain situations. So we're looking at matching babies in the NICU. So if their mom is a secretor, we're going to give them secretor breast milk or secretor donor milk. And if their mom's a non-secretor, then we'll give them non-secretor donor milk. And what we're going to be looking at is their poop, because that's how we figure out what kind of bacteria they are growing in their gut, which is, this is good bacteria. This all goes back to the microbiome. And we're seeing if we match that donor milk to the baby's mom, are they having a better microbiome or a eubiotic microbiome, as opposed if we're not matching.
Oh, that is fascinating. I'm very curious to see the result of it and how this is going to play in the future for these babies.
Yes, I'm very excited too. It's and it's a pilot study. So what that means is with the microbiome, we are still learning a lot about it. We have a lot more evidence with birth and breastfeeding and early life than we do in later life as far as the impacts that it has on health outcomes. But we do know that dysbiosis or irregularities in the microbiome can lead to things like obesity, metabolic diseases, asthma, maybe allergies. So we do know that there is a relationship there. So we're not at the point of examining the clinical outcomes with this study. We're just looking at the mechanistic or the bacterial outcomes to see if maybe there's a difference.
Wow, that is wonderful. I'm really curious to see that. Merilee, but let's talk a little bit about the milk banks now, because this is something that we talk a lot about, milk banks, the importance of milk banks. And you are involved with the NorthernStar Milk Bank in your region, which is a bank that supplies 26 hospitals in 5 different provinces. So is it safe still for moms to donate breast milk, and that breast milk is still safe to be given to the preterm babies?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, I work with the NorthernStar Mother's Milk Bank, which is located here in Calgary. And it's a unique milk bank in Canada because most of the other milk banks are affiliated with a hospital. But as I said, here in Alberta, we have a health region for the entire province. So affiliating with a hospital wasn't going to really work. So the community milk bank donates the milk to all the hospitals in Alberta. And I just updated that number, Fabiana. It's actually 32 hospitals across Canada and some into the United States. So it gives them a little bit more freedom as far as moving milk around the country. And they do take milk, not only from Moms Only in Calgary, but they have depots across the country. So specifically, I know there's a depot in Winnipeg, Regina, I believe Saskatoon has one, and we have several throughout Alberta. So moms across Western Canada, at least, can donate to the NorthernStar Mother's Milk Bank. And then regarding your question about if donor human milk is still safe in COVID, absolutely it is. Even if the virus was present in breast milk, we pasteurize the breast milk. So that's to get rid of any bacteria or viruses that are present. And the pasteurization temperature is 62 degrees, and COVID denatures in the mid to high 50s. I think it's 56. Don't quote me on that. So even if it was present, which we have no evidence to show it is, the pasteurization process would get rid of the virus. So that would make it safe. And then as far as donating breast milk to the milk banks, or any milk bank for that matter, yes, all the milk banks, I think, specifically NorthernStar, are still accepting donors. It is a little bit harder to get screened right now because you do require blood work, but they definitely are accepting donors right now.
So how is the screening now?
So the screening is, it starts with a telephone screening where they ask you a series of questions similar to when you donate blood. If you've traveled, I believe if you've had tattoos, and then if you have a history of any sort of infectious diseases. So they do a verbal screening with you. And then if that is good, then they'll send a lab requisition a request to your doctor to do a lab requisition, or they can issue it themselves. And you take the lab requisition to a lab and they draw blood just to make sure that you don't have any sort of illnesses like HIV or hepatitis or anything like that. And that right now is a little bit of a barrier because some regions are not offering blood tests. Mm-hmm. However, the screening for donor human milk has actually been legislated or made. It's not elective. It's not something that's considered elective. So it would be allowed to have happen in a lab setting right now. So it's just if the mom or the donor is willing to go out and get that blood test done. And then they get the results, and then they'll set the mom up to donate milk.
And if a mom is in a different province, because we had this question before, and they want to donate to your milk bank, is that a process? How is that you can make it happen? If a mom is in Vancouver and want to donate to your milk bank?
So if they're in Vancouver, they would be recommended to donate to the BC Milk Bank for sure. We try to maintain regional donors closer to their milk banks, just because we want all the milk banks to have a good amount of donors, but also the logistics around it are easier too. But if you are interested in donating to a milk bank in your region, you can go either to the Humbana website to look for milk banks across North America. And Humbana is the Human Milk Banking Association of North America. All the milk banks in Canada must be registered under Humbana, and they just provide guidelines for safety and procedures around human milk banking. They're the world leader, and that's who we report to. But you can find a milk bank in your area, and your best bet is to contact the milk bank and ask about donor policies in that region.
We actually have a list of all the milk banks on our website. So yes. CanadianPremies.org, I think the families can go there and inquire about whether they can donate or not. But Merilee, one last question for you in regards to the donor milk banks. How are the volumes right now? Are moms still volunteering and going and donating the milk? Because this is something that obviously all the ICUs still need, whether there is a pandemic or not. This is always in demand.
Absolutely. So donor milk volumes, we were very concerned about at the start of the pandemic, because we were thinking that people were not going to be donating milk because of the barriers. There might be fear around donating milk. So they did prepare themselves, and I can only speak from the NorthernStar Mother Milk Bank perspective, but they are doing okay for milk right now. Part of the reason is our director was really proactive about getting some donors on board, and she's really good about engaging the existing donors as well. So they're doing contactless pickup. So moms just families pull up and pop the trunk, and the milk bank staff come and get the milk. There's no contact happening there. With regards to other milk banks, I'm not sure if that's still the same situation, but the other thing that we didn't really think of is, because we've cleared out all of our hospitals to our best capacity, we don't have the same number of babies in the NICU that we had pre-COVID. So the demand for the donor milk has gone down. So the supply's probably gone down a little bit, but the demand's really gone down. So we're doing okay, but we're still really asking people to still donate if possible.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about the importance of breast milk, because we might have like new moms or moms who are still pregnant, and they probably not have the whole knowledge of what is breast milk. Because for NICU babies, this is way more than food. This is a really the medicine for those babies. Let's chat a little bit about that. And this is something that is always fascinating to me. What is in the breast milk and what provides to our babies?
That's not an easy question to answer, Fabiana. So we are still learning what's in breast milk. It's a phenomenal product. We consider it to be a living tissue, actually, because it has so many components and it's dynamic. It changes from feed to feed. So starting with the basics, of course, you've got your nutrients to feed the baby. So you've got your proteins, your carbohydrates, and your fats. So that's what the baby needs to grow and develop their brain. But beyond that, breast milk also has lots of things that can help with the baby's immunity. The human milk oligosaccharides that I spoke of before are a good example. So not only do they feed bacteria, but they also kind of act as a decoy in the infant's gut for bad bacteria or viruses. So they'll come into the infant's gut and they adhere onto these human milk oligosaccharides and get flushed out in the infant's poop, rather than adhering onto the infant's gut and making the baby sick. Because if it attaches to the infant's gut, then it can go in to the infant's body and make them sick. There's other things as well for immunity. So like I said, I spoke about antibodies. So if mom has been sick, she'll make antibodies in her breast milk that give the baby immunity to those sicknesses. We're still learning about that. Also, there's a really neat concept that we're starting to explore called it's a flow thing. So if baby is sick and they latch to mom's breast, they'll give mom's breast milk the sickness, the virus or the bacteria, and mom will, or the breast milk will make a little immune response and give it back to the baby. So it's called retrograde flow. So the baby actually contaminates the breast milk with their germs, but then there's a response to make the baby healthy. That's just something that we're starting to understand and explore right now. That's really exciting and quite fascinating. And then the other aspect is hormones. There's lots of hormones in the breast milk. So there's good hormones for stress and relaxation, both for mom and baby. And there's growth hormones, so those help the baby grow as well. Yeah, it's very complex. And then of course there's bacteria in the breast milk, the good bacteria or from the microbiome that we're exploring in our lab and in other labs across the world. But so there is a set of commensal or good bacteria that live in breast milk that help to populate the baby's gut with good bacteria so that they help to establish a healthy microbiome.
That is incredible. Merilee, thank you so much for joining me here today. It was a pleasure talking to you and learning from you. And I'm really looking forward to the result of your newest research. So thank you.
Thank you, Fabiana. It was a great experience.
And for all of you at home, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's a Monday long weekend in Canada. And on Friday is World Preeclampsia Day, and I will be talking to Dr. John Kingdom from Mount Sinai Hospital and also the Preeclampsia Foundation Canada, and learn about their work and how they are investing in research to prevent preeclampsia. So thank you so much. And on Wednesday, again, Kate Robson is hosting a real-time peer support group, 1:00 p.m. Eastern Time. And to access that link, you can join the Canadian Premier Parent Network here on Facebook. Thank you and have a lovely afternoon, everyone.